Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us. This is the educational program of the Association of Foreign Press Correspondents in the United States, AFPC-USA. I have the pleasure to have our guest today here, Walt Stinson, who is the co-founder and CEO of ListenUp. Thank you, Walt, for joining us here today. You're joining us from Denver, Colorado, if I'm right?
No, I'm in Hopkins, Belize today.
Okay.
In Central America.
Okay. Today we will discuss about why consumers are demanding new technologies focusing on human security. I would like to make a short introduction of you, Walt, although most of our viewers know about your background and your career accomplishments. We all know that you are an entrepreneur based in Denver, Colorado. That's why I asked you if you are there today, joining us from there today. Yeah. You are the co-founder and CEO of technology integrator ListenUp. We would like to hear a little bit more about this during our conversation. And the ProSource Buying Group Chairman. You are inducted into the Consumer Technology Hall of Fame class of 2009 for your seminal roles in organizing the consumer electronics industry and pioneering digital audio. The concept of this discussion here, I would like to describe it a little bit based on the fact that the last half century, we have seen tremendous technological advancement centered around consumption. Product strategies are rapidly shifting to reflect a rapidly changing marketplace driven by the universe's desire for a safer and for a healthier planet. But the question is how are the changing consumer demands and regulatory pressure creating new technologies focused on human security? And the first question for you, Walt, is how technology has changed the consumer appetite and consumer behavior today.
Well, there's been a dramatic change in my career. I started in the technology industry 50 years ago, and it was an analog technology at that time. So one of my roles in the industry has been to usher the industry from the analog era into the digital era. And I think that the digital era has really been the driver that's changed consumer aspirations as well as the types of products that manufacturers make, which now more and more are software driven rather than hardware driven. The platforms are software defined, and the hardware is really not where most of the intellectual property goes anymore. So that's what we're looking at. We're looking at a digital world that started for consumers in about 1982, and many people think that we've made the transition from analog to digital, but that digital world is just beginning. We're just starting our journey as a digital universe. And so it's impacting a lot of factors in society, human security being one of them that you mentioned before. But consumer demands are really driven by an understanding that we're all interconnected and by the underlying digital technology.
And what do you think are the prospects for the future?
Well, I think that it's pretty exciting. I think there are really two aspects that need to be focused on. One is the incredible progress that we're going to be making and have made and will continue to make due to the digital platform that technology rests on. It'll become more powerful. It'll become more encompassing. It'll become more interconnected. We're in a world now of Internet of Things, and we're talking about things like digital twins, for example, that are going to affect technology tremendously. And then on the flip side, technology has its benefits that it can provide to humanity, and it also has dangers that need to be controlled, that companies need to be aware of them. I think there are a lot more ethical considerations that companies and governments need to be aware of as these technologies become more powerful.
And would you advocate, are you considered an advocate of a stricter and stronger legislation to regulate data mining and targeting advertisement? And in general, do you think that technological development that affects the consumer options should be more regulated or less?
Well, I'm in favor of more or less a laissez-faire approach, but of course that has its limits. I think that people's personal security, that political security and community security are all tied up with having some limits on how far digital technology can go. But I think it's a slippery slope. I think governments have to have a light hand. They don't want to overregulate. If we overregulate, then we don't get the benefits of the technology. If we underregulate, I think we have too much exposure. So there's a fine line that needs to be drawn, and that's a big worry. That's a big concern of mine, that we won't have leaders that really know where to draw that line. Also, I think that as long as the technology isn't coercive, in other words, as long as people aren't forced to use it, or the companies involved don't have a monopoly, I would be in favor of not much, if any, regulation. Where regulation comes in is when the companies have a monopoly, a market share that is so great that consumers don't really have a choice. That's where it becomes more important that you have the proper regulation.
How would we define, because one of the topics of our discussion is, of course, human security, how would you define this concept in modern terms? And how do you see the impact of technology on the area of human security? But I think we need to define for those who...
I just returned from the Consumer Electronics Show where 115,000 people attended to learn about the latest technology. And I would say that the latest at the drivers at the Consumer Electronics Show this year, 2023, it wasn't a new technology, it was an idea, and that idea was human security. Human security is driving companies to come out with new technologies and new solutions. And human security is also driving the regulatory framework as well. But what we saw at CES was more and more products that are addressing food technology, health technology, products that can address personal security issues and economic security issues as well. But the most exciting areas of technology at CES this year were in personal security and mobility, and in food security and health security. There are a lot of products being developed, and it's because of the interconnectedness of all this technology and the fact that it can be processed in the cloud, puts a lot of power in the hands of individuals to control their lives more effectively, to lead healthier lives and more productive lives. So human security is a very important paradigm that the Consumer Technology Association recognized, and for the first time themed the CES show on anything. You know, human security was the first time the show has ever been themed. I think that is evidence of the importance of the paradigm and how it's shifting consumer aspirations.
Can you give us a little bit of an overview to learn a little bit more about your company, ListenUp, and how did you get concerned or involved in the area of human security? What drove you?
ListenUp is a technology integrator, and I co-founded it in 1972, And throughout my career, I've been working on organizational development in the technology industry. I founded a trade association called PARA to really look at common issues that affect companies in our industry. And right now, I'm the chairman of ProSource, which is the largest buying group in the consumer electronics space. And it's a company comprised of ProSource is a buying group comprised of large and small companies in the technology space, primarily integrators and retailers. So I got involved in the Human Security Project because I'm a fellow of the World Academy, and it's a campaign of the World Academy of Art and Science and the United Nations Trust Fund for Human Security. So I saw it as something that technology is going to play an important role in. I think technology and human security go hand in hand. Like I said before, there are also downsides to technology and ethical considerations. And I think that trade associations are a really effective organizational body to deal with those sorts of issues, maybe even more effectively than government can.
And what do you think that on behalf of companies in the field of technology, what do you think is what is expected, is anticipated from these companies to do in order to contribute to human security and to support this scope and this concept? What are the requirements? What do you think is the necessary steps that in our more modern era technological companies should take in order to address
Well,
this?
yeah, it's very context specific. Like I said, a lot of companies in the tech sector are very small. And so they have a different set of business conditions that they're looking at than companies that are very large. When I look at the large companies, most of them have a C-level executive that is dealing with SDG issues and focused on things like gender equality and environmental issues and trying to reduce waste within the company and waste on the side of the consumer as well. They're addressing recycling issues. That's a big deal in the electronic space right now. How to recycle these products, how to get more life out of them when they're no longer functional. And certain aspects of consumer electronic products lend themselves very nicely to recycling. So I would say it varies with company. The larger companies are very concerned about the regulatory framework and trying to align themselves with it. I think smaller companies are looking at issues like how to hire more tech workers. They're very concerned about the educational aspect, the fact that the half-life of a tech education is quite short and workers need to be retrained quite frequently. So in the ProSource group that I'm the chair of today, we have our own educational initiative to to try to help workers stay up to date on the latest technologies. And when a dramatic technological shift takes place, we even retrain them for a new type of technology so that they can use their base knowledge and apply it to a new technological platform. So those are some of the things that we're looking at.
So you, from what you say, I understand that for you, for your approach and perspective, education plays also an important role of how
It does.
make people, employees in the field of technology, educated about the latest trends and
That's right.
learning what is their own role in this process of human security, right?
That's right. I think there's still a lot of work to be done in the workplace to make it more welcoming to women, for example. In the tech industry, it tends to be dominated by men. And so from a human security standpoint, I don't think that's acceptable. And with the type of employment environment we're in today, it's not desirable from the company's perspective either. But these attitudes are hard to change, and so it's very important that companies take a proactive role and try to address these things proactively rather than just being passive and trying to create a welcoming environment for minorities and women, for example, in the tech workforce. I think you have to be very proactive about that, about creating the type of a work climate that all workers are going to feel that they can be productive in and be happy in their job, and want to remain in the job. I think there's more turnover. My impression is there's more turnover in with women in tech jobs than there is with men, for example. I think that points to a need to try to create a healthier environment for women in tech.
And what is your view about the concept of cooperation and social responsibility on behalf of the stakeholders, those companies who are in the technology field? Is this necessary in order for the technology companies to contribute in the concept of human security? Are cooperation and social responsibility two major principles? Are there other principles you would add on that concept?
Well, I think that it is important. I think that ethics in business is more important today than it's ever been. And I think that's because we're digital technology. It can be very intrusive, and it can be manipulated in ways that aren't serving society. And so I think that's another area, just like what I was talking about earlier about the concept of creating a more welcoming work environment for women. I think we also need to have a stronger ethical framework for dealing with some of the potential downsides of digital technology. We have to be a lot more careful about data, and we probably need to move away from asking people to give their permission every time they visit a new website, and instead have a global permissioning system that people can change and provide exceptions for. There's a lot of progress we need to make. I think we're still, as I mentioned earlier, we're still at the beginning, and we really don't know how to handle a lot of these questions properly, I don't think. But it's an exciting time, and I think there's a lot of opportunity as well for tech companies.
Opportunities, but are also incentives for tech companies to be part of that, to show good interest, goodwill, to contribute, to participate in this. Gary Jacobs called it a movement, in this movement for human security on behalf of technological companies.
I think the bigger the company and the bigger the market share it has, the bigger the problem. The smaller the company, the less market share it has, the smaller the problem. I think that that many companies aren't in a position to take advantage of a monopoly position, and they're not even going to try. It doesn't even cross their mind. I think that when you start talking about large companies that have huge market share, that's where you get into problems. I mean, what I've seen in my life in the tech world is that competition is really the driver of technological development, and that the bigger the company gets, the less it's interested in innovation, and the more it's interested in protecting its market share. So I'm a big believer in competition. I'm a big believer in creating a level playing field. And I believe that if those conditions are met, that will maximize not only technological progress, but will maximize the benefits to society as well.
And what is the response to in terms of a policy approach, but also in terms of a self-regulatory approach in the field of technological in the field of technology for technological companies, for those companies who do not show any goodwill, they try to exploit their consumers, their clients. What can be a response for that
I
behavior?
think the response is the typical response that I've seen is to break up the company. If it gets to be too big, most of these companies have interlocking divisions that dominate the market. When you start unlocking those divisions, then you open up the market for more competition. That's a last resort in my view, because there are a lot of benefits that large companies provide as well. It's not really my field, but I do believe that regulators have to look at that. They have to determine in the context of their legal framework what's going to be in the best interest of society. I think that we're struggling with that today, and I think it's because of the speed with which the digital technology has really driven the marketplace, and the speed with which some of these companies have gone from nothing to a dominant position in the marketplace. So, like I said, I'm a big believer in competition, and sometimes it's necessary to have government involved to create more competition. I'm not in favor of that, because I believe that technology changes very rapidly, and that one person's dominant position today can be another person's opportunity tomorrow if that company doesn't really keep up with the changes that take place in the digital world. So I'm much more in favor of a laissez-faire approach, but I'm open to the idea of regulation if that's what's required in order to protect society from abuse.
Mm-hmm. And Walt, what is the role of consumers in this process? Does the consumer demands um, play a role on enforcing technology companies to change their attitude, change their priorities, change their mindset?
Well, it's very difficult for the consumer if a company has a dominant position, right? So that's that then the political class becomes a reflection of the overall consumer sentiment. And I think there are plenty of politicians around that are ready to take advantage of the overall consumer sentiment, right? To try to protect consumers if that's necessary. I think that consumers are really the beneficiaries of digital technology. I think it's opened up a lot of entertainment opportunities, communications opportunities, and learning opportunities for consumers. I think prices have been driven down. I think service levels have been driven up by digital technology. So I think I don't want to focus too much on, abuses, because I think that the consumer's net has been incredibly beneficial. I've seen that in the consumer technology field, which is really my specialty. I've really seen a dramatic increase in quality and a decrease in price as a result of digital technology. And service levels have really gone up, delivery, things like that. There's still some issues that we have to deal with, but I think that things are moving in the right direction for the consumer when it comes to consumer technology products.
So this is in benefit of consumers, these trends.
I'm certainly seeing a lot of consumer benefits. There's no
And
question about it.
before we conclude this conversation, Walt, I would like to ask you, what is your major fear and what is your major hope for the future related to the transformation of the technological field, the role of technology on human security? and on consumer security and consumer demands?
Well, I feel that we're facing problems today that um, that defy the ability of any one nation to address it effectively. I think that we need human security today because we're all interconnected, and we have common problems that have to be solved with common solutions through an aspiration of the overall society and not one individual or one country. So I think we need to come together under the banner of human security as a people, and I think that technology can help do that. I think it is helping do that. I think it's helping to connect people, and I think it's helping to educate people. So I have a lot of optimism for the future, and I feel that technology can play, especially technological innovation, can play a very important role in solving some of the world's most pressing issues.
And that's a great message to conclude this conversation. Walt, thank you so much, Walt Stinson, for being with us here today on behalf of the Association of Foreign Press Correspondents, AFPC-USA, for joining us, and really appreciate it. Thank you for your time.
You're welcome. It's a pleasure being with you today.
Thank you.
Have a good day.